what's up? Welcome to another episode of the CANiVISION Midwest Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jackson.
I'm Tatiana Grant.
And welcome to the Detroit Foundation Hotel in downtown Detroit. Shout out to our sponsors. Always appreciative for being here.
Thank you.
We have two very, very special guests. And I keep telling everybody, like, it's this thing that Tatiana knows everybody apparently, because she walked in the room and it was like they've known each other forever. So I'm out the loop in most cases, but it's all good. I appreciate my co-host.
Let me just say something. So we spent how many hours of our lives together?
Too many.
In a very short period of time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Actually, we had to schedule this a certain way because Thursdays for 3 hours consecutively we were all together on Zooms.
Okay.
So and those were the official meetings. Yeah. We had meetings before the meetings, meetings after the meetings, all of that.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm just not in the cool kids club. It's cool. So, welcome to Midwest Canna Nurses. How y'all doing today? We got Nurse Ebony and Nurse B with us today.
Yes. Thank you for having us.
How y'all
nice
doing?
To be here.
We're good.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Happy to be here. I appreciate y'all. Happy New Year.
Yes.
Yes.
New Year.
We made it to 2021.
Yes.
How y'all feeling about it? You feeling any different about?
You know, I am manifesting that it's going to be a great year.
Okay.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good answer.
Good answer. We're going to go with that one. We're going to go with that one. I'm with it. Yeah, okay. So, not often that we have medical professionals here with us. You know, a lot of us give our perspectives about what we think is happening. I know at our stores, we try to keep people as educated as possible, especially because we're dealing with patients who indeed view this as a medicine. But it's another level of conversation when you have people who actually know like what's going on. And I feel like most of us need to know what's going on. So very much appreciate you all for being here with us, right? So we want to dive into the topic for the week, which is rescheduling versus descheduling cannabis federally, right? So for those of you who don't know what the difference is, rescheduling ultimately means that it goes from a Schedule 1 drug to potentially a different number. Does it go up in number? 2, 3, 4? Is that how it would go? Okay. Yeah. So it goes to a different number that would allow for research, science.
Yeah.
Basically pharmaceutical companies to run the industry, in my opinion. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have descheduling, which means that it would fall from a schedule at all and it would be decriminalized altogether.
Yes.
Correct? So from a medical perspective, right, can you talk a little bit to what you understand as rescheduling and then what you think is descheduling and then your opinion on which should happen?
Yeah, so kind of just going off of what you said, rescheduling right now, it's a Control 1 substance, meaning it does not have, so they say, it does not have any medicinal value. That has led to everything that we see today with the convictions, with the stigma around it, with people not wanting to use it as a medicine, even though it's been presented as such in the last few years. And then descheduling on the other end is what cannabis was when it first got here, right? It was a plant, people recognized its benefits. They used it throughout their everyday practices, whether that be for spiritual reasons, for medical reasons, and nobody got in trouble for it. Nobody was looked at differently or frowned upon for using it. And ultimately, that is what descheduling would be if we ever got back to it.
Okay. Anything to add, Nurse Ebony?
I think she pretty much captured it. When we talk about something being scheduled as a Control 1 or a Schedule 1 medication or a substance, that is something where we're saying this medication could essentially be something that you're dependent upon, something that you can overdose on, something that could be deadly to you. And research shows that cannabis is not that. History shows that people using it on a regular basis. I think that there's limited studies that show folks who are overdosing on cannabis. So we're not saying that it's something that we should not research. I think that it should be something that we are taking a dive into because there is medicinal properties. We want to make sure that people are using it safely, but we don't want to criminalize the plant. So.
Okay.
Which brings to your second part of the question, how do we feel about both?
Right.
So I would have to say, as a nurse, I would have to advocate for either, because the rescheduling would allow for the research that will make way for descheduling down the line, or just it being more available to use for medical reasons more immediately, right? Because when we put the science behind it, then we get the doctors behind it, and after the doctors say it's okay, most other folks follow behind. Right. However, as a black nurse, as a black nurse,
because you are that.
Yeah, I have to roll with descheduling, because without going to get too ahead of ourselves, in talking to black patients, because that's the community I live in, that's the community I work in, it makes it that much more complicated for me to talk to them as a healthcare professional about cannabis, because all of the things they've had to endure as a black person in America as it relates to cannabis, or weed, as they want to call it.
No doubt. Okay. Are you pro rescheduling or descheduling? Where you at with it?
I really don't know. I mean, and the reason why I say that is because I we're in all the Facebook groups, and we have all of our people that it's a plant, like it's a plant. We need to go back.
Right.
And on the reverse side, I think about the business side of it, and I'm like, so what does that mean? If that happens, and it is a plant, it's viewed as such, does that mean that there's no testing? Is there no licensing? Does the industry go away? I guess that's my question.
Gotcha.
More so, what does that mean, I guess, in real life? How is that applied to our lives, considering how far along we are in the process with it being an industry?
Right.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of where my head is at.
So realistically then...
So I don't know.
All right. So realistically then, a combination of the two would be preferred, right?
Yes.
To some extent.
Yeah.
Okay, so big news out of Georgia. Democrats turning blue. And now...
A lot has happened.
Yes.
A lot has happened. A lot is still happening.
Yes.
It's a whole other conversation for another podcast.
Correct.
So the assumption now is that federal legalization to some extent happens sooner, hopefully within the next couple years before midterms, right? Because right now the Democrats control all of the branches of government, right? So Vice President Harris has gone on record to say, or Vice President-elect goes on record to say, decriminalization is my thing, which it should be, by the way. Also another thing for another podcast. And then on the flip side, Biden has said, I'm more interested in research and development, rescheduling versus descheduling. Is there a world, from your perspectives, that the two coincide together to some extent? Is it possible?
Decriminalization.
Which descheduling, right?
Okay.
So descheduling and rescheduling to some extent. Can the two coexist, right? Can you deschedule and still require research? Is that possible? Let me start there. Let me ask that question.
Yeah, I think that the purpose of descheduling is to facilitate that research, because right now, researchers, there are a lot of, hoops and hurdles to jump through. They need to have a certain grade of cannabis to study. It has to come from a certain place. So descheduling will allow researchers to have a larger pool of cannabis to study. And I do think there's a world that both of those things can exist, because while they teeter along the same lines, I think that they're completely different.
Okay.
They are.
Okay. I'm with that.
I'm with it too.
I'm here for that.
Well, no, the reason why I say that is because I'm just thinking of it, from an agricultural perspective. If it really truly goes back to a plant in agriculture, it's a whole industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Farmers everywhere.
Yep.
Yep.
So I think so.
Now it gets tricky.
Okay.
When we're talking about the federal government, right? Because without getting too deep into it, there's a reason why we got to it being a controlled substance in the first place. All types of areas of racism and whatever you want to name. But like, you'll go back and you'll see that the government has patents for cannabis. You'll see that in certain instances they've been supplying patients, a handful or more of patients, with medical marijuana for over 30 years now. Almost over 40 years now. So it becomes difficult because now this market, the industry as it exists, folks are very optimistic about it. Some folks are very optimistic about it. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity. However, with that opportunity for the little guy, that's what I'll coin it as, everybody else has their fangs out already. They have the paperwork, they have the documents, they have all of those things and tools under their belt, just like waiting for the federal government to openly say, hey, this is okay, and then we'll come down just like Big Pharma does. And that is what's scary about the whole situation.
So on the one hand, we'd like to see it happen. On the other hand, once it happens,
like what?
Theoretically, a lot of us are screwed in the process.
Yeah, we would get pushed out for sure.
Gotta take the good with the bad, though, in some cases. I don't know how to get around it without taking the good with the bad in this situation.
And I feel like we even saw that with what we worked on.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you worked on. That is an awesome segue. So these ladies, who else did we have on the show? Margot, right?
Margot.
No, what was
she
it?
wasn't on.
Well, who else did we have on the show that you worked with? Maybe it was nobody it was probably the racial task force. I'm sorry, you just departed so much. All right. So my question is then, all right, not my question. So you guys are all, you gals, are all a part of the Detroit Ordinance Work Group?
City of Detroit Social Equity Program Work Group.
Interesting.
Yes, we were all chairs of different committees.
Yes.
Okay. And what committees were you chairs of? For the record. Right.
For the record, I was the chair of the funding committee.
Okay.
I was chair of Legacy Detroiter committee.
And
I was just agreeing with everybody. What about you, B?
I was co-chair of Education and Workforce Development.
Okay. All right. I like that one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, all right. Obviously, it was a long, drawn-out process. How long was the process to come up with the ordinance?
It started in February.
Okay.
We really got into it like March. I will never forget. We had a March 13th deadline.
Yes.
Yes.
That didn't matter?
It was Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why it stuck out so much.
Friday the 13th.
Okay.
And I mean, we just finished.
Just finished.
Right.
Yeah.
We finished when the public got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, long story short,
Right.
very, very long process.
Okay. So, I think I've been on record with my feelings about it on this show, actually. I might share a little bit in the future. But how do you all feel about the end product? And this is important because at the end of the day, I think what Councilman Tate and the group was trying to accomplish makes sense. It's necessary. People in Detroit who have lived in Detroit deserve an opportunity to own businesses within the municipalities that they exist in. And we see it throughout all of the urban areas where it's typically not the case, right? So, kudos for trying to do it. My opinion, it's too late to do it in some ways because it should have been done on the front end of the process. But, I guess the past is the past. So now that we are where we are, right, do you anticipate, and if you can't answer, just say you can't answer, I'll answer for you. Do you anticipate that it's going to work the way that it's intended to work?
Such a simple but loaded question.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate too long because I'll throw an answer out there. Go ahead, I'm listening. Yeah, do your thing.
Well, I don't think that it's a clear yes or no answer. Honestly, I think what it was intended to do, it was very ambitious. We're essentially trying to level the playing field, if you will, for those who are from the city, those who have been disproportionately impacted from criminalization of marijuana from the 1970s and moving forward. So with that said, a lot of those folks are at a disadvantage. They don't have those resources that you would typically see people who are going out for licensing. So with that being said, yes, we would love to see all Detroiters get into the industry and be able to thrive, but those resources aren't readily available. So to say, will it actually work? If there's resources attached to it, potentially if there's mentorship attached to it. I think if it continues to be a process, this isn't the end, this is just the beginning.
Right.
If we continue to pour energy into it, resources, money, folks who have education, expertise, people who have passion for it, I think it could be successful.
No, I'm just kidding.
Right. That is a very nice way of putting that.
Yes.
I'm not mad at that at all. So resources, so that was Tati's job, right? To come up with the funding and the resources.
Well,
right?
I think resources could be a slew of things. So that could be funding, that could be land, that could be education, that could
the
be
only three things that really matter. I'm with you on that.
Yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. What was the outcome of your committee? Let me ask that question.
Pending.
Okay.
A lot of what was in the ordinance, so going back, chairing the education and workforce development, a lot of the ideas and concepts that we came up with in that committee surrounded getting the general public aware of what's going on, which you see some of those efforts through the city already, just doing the town hall meetings. I believe they have a couple other sessions with folks from around the city to explain what's going on with the ordinance. It also looks like educating the public kind of in the way that we do, like now that it's here and now that you have access to it, for those that are over 21, what do you do with it? You know, how do you best use it? So that's still something that we need to figure out and that we need to see happen on, like, you know, more of a larger scale. Also, like Ebony mentioned, for the folks who are starting or want to come into operation, they need mentorship. We talked about having an incubator for all the different licenses and having folks who are already in operation come and help those folks, you know. So we haven't had the opportunity to see those things because those things don't necessarily belong in the ordinance. However, we're hopeful that the city continues to work on those aspects because Detroiters, they're going to need it.
And I just want to add one thing. You know, one of the things that we've seen at both the city ordinance level and what we've been working on at the state level is the issue. Whereas affirmative action and any sort of benefits tied to race in Michigan is illegal. So, you know, growing up, you know, some of us may have benefited from affirmative action and things of that sort. I don't know the year, but it became illegal in Michigan. So many of the things that we were looking to put in the ordinance that would have benefited minorities by race, legally we could not put in there because it would be unconstitutional. So as a result, many of the substitutes for that make the qualifications extremely difficult in some people's certain situations.
Agreed. Yeah.
So it's a weird spot to be in.
Definitely.
Okay. Fair enough. And when does the applications go live?
January 19th.
January 19th.
For Legacy Detroiter.
For Legacy
Yes.
Detroiter.
And that allows you, is it 6 months?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
You have a 6 week window.
So you got a 6 week window for Legacy Detroiters. And then what's the next group?
You have your
Currently licensed medical facilities.
Okay. And then
General
after
applicants.
that. Okay. So I hope that everything.
What you gotta say?
I'm gonna say.
Swallowed that.
Yeah, exactly. What you trying to say?
I am going to say that I hope that everything that you are prescribed. See, I just did that. That everything that you are prescribed is what indeed will be best, and you know, people from the city of Detroit will absolutely have an opportunity to participate. Was that a good politically correct
I think
way
it
to say
was.
it? All right, we're
That
gonna
was
leave it
great.
there. Cool. All right, so transitioning. your journey into cannabis, because this is the reason why we're here.
Yeah.
Tell us more about it. We've had conversations, but would love for everyone else to kind of get to know you all better. Why the transition, in a way, not necessarily a transition because you two are still nurses, but you know.
I love the logo, by the way.
Thank
I
you.
was keeping it. I'm like, ooh, I love it.
And then you see the green and purple.
Yeah.
Green and purple. Hey, yo, dig
Oh,
it. I saw it. I see you. So tell us more about yourselves and how cannabis gets involved in that.
Well, you want to start?
Oh, okay, sure. So like we said, by trade, we're nurses. I'm a nurse. I am originally born and raised in Detroit. I grew up maybe 10 minutes from here in the inner city, West Grand Boulevard in McGraw. So if you know Detroit, I don't know if you do, but if you do, McGraw, yes, it's a nice little area.
Does it look like downtown?
No, it does not.
Okay, cool. Got it.
No,
Okay.
it does not.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Not now. 20 years ago, didn't look like it either. But
Got it.
yeah. So grew up in that area. I attended all Detroit public schools. I attended Sampson Elementary, Weber, Chadsey High School. Actually, 2 out of the 3 are closed, believe it or not. No longer in existence. Ended up leaving, going to HBCU, Grambling State. Go Tigers. Came back with my bachelor's in nursing and just kind of hit the ground running with nursing in general. I've always had a passion for serving the community that I live in, so that's what I focused on. So I've done a few things. I've done bedside nursing, I've done labor and delivery, I've done community nursing, and now I'm doing ambulatory care, actually work in a clinic in the city of Detroit. So all of those experiences have actually just brought me to the understanding that Black people in general are just at a disadvantage when it comes to health equity. I was, able to see those being stereotyped because of maybe their use of marijuana, maybe their use of heroin, or maybe them being on having Medicaid or having some type of state assistance. So I've always gravitated to pulling up my community. So fast forward, cannabis ended up coming into my life. I actually have a nurse supervisor who introduced me to cannabis nursing. Never heard of it. I've always been an advocate for cannabis. I actually have family members who were able to use it. I have an uncle who was a heroin addict, and before he passed was actually able to become sober by using cannabis as his tool. So always was a proponent for the use of cannabis as medicine. So when she introduced that to me, that thought of just being a cannabis nurse, being able to tie those two things together, it was just a no-brainer. Ended up just doing a lot of research, a lot of professional development, just looking into what cannabis nurses is, what they do, looking into the endocannabinoid system, and then ultimately meeting Bahia and us just kind of joining forces. We share the same passion and the same goals, so it made sense for us to collaborate and join those efforts and try to make a difference. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yes. So I am originally from Chicago, came to Michigan in 2010 for undergrad at U of M. And since that time, I had a couple of nursing jobs, mainly in private duty home care in the community setting. And working in that setting, you get to see, it's different from being in the hospital, because the hospital is such a curated environment. You got rules, regulations, all those things. But when you're a healthcare provider in the community, you see a lot of different stuff. You get to see people in their home environment, in their elements of comfort, and that is a whole different nursing experience. In my opinion, it's a more holistic experience, even if you're providing traditional nursing care. So let me back up and say cannabis in some form or fashion has always been around, whether it's a friend, a family, a doorstep, a coffee table. I was not ignorant to cannabis or its effects. However, I was on the job one day in private duty, and I was working with my patient at the time was a young man, quadriplegic, which means he's paralyzed from the neck down. He had a neck injury that he sustained in high school, but they introduced cannabis to him because he spent a lot of time spasming. And let me just back up and say, my man's worked at a high level. Like, we went to college together, you know, to put it into perspective. He was studying while I was studying, so it was a lot, you know, and cannabis became a tool for him where he could not spasm throughout the day. I didn't have to run over there and, you know, fix his ventilator or fix his trach. He was much more focused and locked in doing his schoolwork. His father had a host of back issues. He even came in with some rubs and creams, and, you know, I would see all of this stuff laying around, and, you know, I'm like, okay, let me close this cabinet, let me not, you know, because I'm like, I'm at work, you know, this is too much. But no, literally, I mean, because it's home care, I'm going in their refrigerator, their freezer, they pulling out the dinner, pulling out the edible at the same time. And it was normalized in that way, and I saw the effects that it had, and it made me want to learn more. So that's exactly what I did. Starting to do research, starting to affiliate myself with different cannabis organizations. And at the time, because nursing is what it is, cannabis is taboo in healthcare. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go get a business license. That just wasn't feasible with all of the hoops, hurdles, steps, money involved in doing that. But with that being said, being in those spaces, it really made me realize how important it was to have a healthcare professional at the table and involved in these discussions. Because even if we're talking about just economically, you know, your economic situation has an effect on your overall health care. Cannabis has if you do it right, you get the opportunity to change your economic situation, you know. And I think that a lot of people, they weren't making those links. However, when I told it to them as a nurse, oh yeah, Miss Nurse, you're right. So I'm like, okay, this is the space that I need to be in, because, you know, representation matters. You know, being able to talk to my folks about whether it's being in the industry or using the plant is where I find my comfort. Like I said, I got involved with a couple different organizations, but I started with my family. I started with my friends, because even in my circle, the stigma was very, very hard to break. It was like, oh yeah, you want to do cannabis? I'm like, Mom, yeah, I'm about to do cannabis. Okay, like, you know what I mean? They looked at me like I was crazy.
Right. Absolutely. Is that legal?
Exactly. Are you sure? You know you went to Michigan, right? You don't have to do that. Like, y'all gotta chill. But yeah, that's my journey. Like Ebony said, we joined forces to hopefully do some education throughout the city, break down that stigma for our people, and making them one with the plant.
Got it. So along those lines, we got our brand colors, we got the logo.
Hey.
How are you putting, you know, cannabis and the use of it into practice these days? Or what are the plans?
Well, I mean, a couple different ways. I mean, first of all, we do a lot of talking to community folks, right? Your community leaders, your pastors, your folks that sit on boards, and it all goes back to literally folks trust nurses. So where they may not have been reached by speaking to someone else, we come in and we provide a different perspective, especially pushing the health benefits of it. And a lot of times it resonates with those folks. We also counsel patients individually. A lot of people are using cannabis. A lot of people are self-medicating with cannabis, but they have no idea, like, if you do this right, if you do microdosing, if you look at the different cannabinoids, if you really focus on the symptoms that you're trying to treat, you're going to open up Pandora's box. You think you found it, but you haven't. So we operate in that space to educate people, working on individual care plans with them. We have hopes to be integrated with some of these facilities, these dispensaries, the front-facing folks, because we want you all or other operators to be mindful of what they're talking to about patients. I've had the opportunity to go into a couple different dispensaries, and folks are very knowledgeable about the products, you know what I mean? And maybe even sometimes the effects you're going to feel from the products, but the in-between, helping people really walk through, okay, my past medical history is this. I'm on these other medications and they're going to interact like this. Being able to put that information out there because folks don't even know what questions to ask when they walk into a dispensary. So yeah, that's the space that we operate in.
I love it.
Yeah.
In our racial task force, we've been talking about credentialing, right? And continuous education and what that means. Does it mean having a nurse on staff potentially, right, for the entire organization, or is it that there's just a certain amount of training hours that need to be accomplished in order for our bud tenders, patient care folks, right, to be able to give knowledgeable information, and that's a catch-22, right? Because at the same time, we don't want these people to say, or the folks that work on our staff, I don't want them to say definitively this is what it does because they haven't been credentialed in the way that you have. But it's useful to be able to at least say, based on our training, this is ultimately what we've gotten to. And so my hope is that, you don't necessarily have to go after each individual dispensary provisioning center, and that agencies basically make it policy for the state. And I think that was one of the ones, correct me if I'm wrong, that should be coming down the pipeline.
We have until the 14th to review everything.
Okay.
But I think so.
Okay. We must have gotten an email between...
Right. You know how that goes.
Okay.
There's a press conference on Monday.
Interesting. Who's invited?
We'll talk later.
Okay. Sounds good. So that's dope. You know what I mean? I appreciate your mission and what you all want to accomplish. Do you have any examples of you speaking with individuals and helping them through that process? And I know you alluded to maybe some family members who have had certain experiences at some point, right? But and I understand you can't, using that word again, prescribe anything.
Yes.
But you can say, based on this experience, this is what I've seen.
Yeah, we're leading them back to the research.
Okay.
Leading them back to other case studies, other examples that have been proven, tried and true. So for me, let's see, a recent example, I literally got a message from a friend the other day who was saying that they had a relative, we got to go second, third hand here because we're dealing with something that's taboo, right? Which is why we're trying to, which is what we're trying to break down. But this friend, they were saying that their cousin was taking loads of Xanax. They had a bunch for anxiety and was more interested in traditional medicine. And this friend that I was talking to was actually a nurse. So she's like, do you have a cannabis regimen that you would recommend or whatever? So, what are the symptoms? How old is this person? What else are they doing? What else do they have going on? And we're able to say, hey, try CBD tinctures, you know what I mean? You can supplement some gummies in there if you want. Start low and go slow is the recommendation that we give to most folks. And literally she texted me back like, oh, okay, so can you tell us where to go and put together a grocery list for us? Because you sound like you're talking Chinese right now. And I was just
Did you say go to Sticky Detroit? Okay.
I said that give me a call,
okay,
and I will direct her further.
I got you. Okay.
And in the same breath, had someone who was trying to treat their chronic pain from polycystic ovarian syndrome. Folks who are trying to use cannabis to keep their blood pressure and blood sugar under control. A lot of the things that are really common just amongst everyday folks, anxiety is out the roof because of 2020 and coming into COVID. This year with all the events, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. But also treating those conditions that are common in our community, like hypertension, your diabetes,
PTSD.
PTSD.
Yeah, for sure.
Big one.
We see that all day, every day. Yeah.
Big one.
What about you? Any experiences?
That's probably the most common. I think I probably see more so than not those mental health issues. Folks who aren't necessarily diagnosed. I've seen, you know, your everyday professionals struggle right now, especially with the pandemic. There's a lot of isolation. You're not able to do the things that you're used to doing. You're not able to see family. You're not able to travel. So those things can be pretty detrimental to someone's quality of life. So we're seeing a lot of anxiety, stress. We're seeing increase in substance abuse, whether that is alcohol, whether that's illegal substances. We're seeing unhealthy sexual practices, believe it or not. So a lot of different things are affecting folks' psyche when it comes to just not being able to manage that stress. So cannabis definitely helps.
We'll talk off camera.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was at first thinking.
Yeah.
I think I may have thought of a few ideas just that quick.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
There are some.
Yes, for
All
sure.
right.
There are some. Probably though, I really like dealing with, and this is going to sound bad, but the folks who are like, I'm trying to get off this medication, or not even a medication. Some folks are like, I need to cut back drinking. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not talking about even your alcoholic, but you know, your working professional that's like, okay, where's my cup of wine as soon as they get off work? You know what I mean? A lot of people have been able to use cannabis as a bridge to let some of those things go. Opioids are another big thing. Folks that are addicted to these pain medications have been using cannabis to bridge that gap. Our seniors are a big population that we're like, you need some cannabis in your life because your pill box is overflowing.
Yes.
When you see that they're open to it, they're definitely using it. Believe it or not, I think they're one of the fastest growing demographics.
They are.
So yes, I definitely see our senior citizens using cannabis. It helps, you know, for sure. It's something that they're able to use in the privacy of their own home. We've advanced where, you know, you're able to use something that's more discreet. You're not having to smoke and deal with that smell or even worry about it irritating, you know, your lungs, if that's something that you deal with. So just being able to have options, I think, makes it easier for folks to use it, for sure.
Thanks. Okay.
Definitely.
My question is answered. You know?
Oh goodness, what's mine? What is a legacy you all would like to leave?
So many things. We're so ambitious.
So many things.
I know.
So ambitious. I love it.
So I think for me, and this is one thing that we did not mention when we were talking about what kind of services we offer and what we're into, is we need more nurses to do this. We have got to get people on board. If I want to set an example, I want to be an inspiration to other nurses that look like us, especially, to join in on what we're doing. Between the policies and advocating, being a boots on the ground advocate, interacting directly with community members, we need so many folks. We need so many educated, dedicated, motivated folks to join us on this journey so that we can have a larger impact. You'll see organizations that are specifically dedicated to cannabis nurses, and they're awesome. We've learned a lot from them. We've gotten a lot of support. However, the job, the task is so large. We need more local folks. We need more folks right here in the city of Detroit that are doing the same things that we do, so that we can have the biggest impact. One of the nurses that we follow, she was talking on Clubhouse the other day, and she was like, you know, the table is being built right now. Like, grab a chair and make your spot. And that's what I want to say to the other nurses. Like, I want to be that person who says it's okay. You know, I want to be the person, and not that I'm, you know, anybody that is somebody that gives permission or anything like that, but I want to give other nurses permission to do what we're doing. It's okay. The people need this, and if you watch the trends of the government, it's gonna happen anyway. So you know, come with us.
Right. I love it.
I would say for me it's similar. Like I said, I'm a huge proponent of community. So something that I feel as though would be instrumental and impactful, and what I would consider be me leaving a legacy would be changing the lives of the community that I serve, changing the lives of the people who look like me, being able to 20 years, 30 years down the line, see things that I did that, truly impacts the lives of those folks. So changing the narrative, changing the face of cannabis supporters, changing the face of what cannabis users look like. We tend to stereotype, especially African American people, minorities who use cannabis are usually attached to a negative stigma. It's, they're lazy, they're not going to work, they're irresponsible, they're not reliable, and that's not the case. Absolutely. There's tons of folks who are successful, and there's research to support that, where it shows that folks who are using cannabis on a regular basis are actually more productive. So, but definitely just impacting the lives of the community that I serve, being able to use cannabis openly without someone, turning their nose up at you, whether it is you smoking a joint or you using an edible. So just being able to normalize what cannabis use looks like and who uses it. I would love, for that to be my legacy.
And we had a conversation about that. I don't know what episode that was, right? Where having a glass of wine at 9 or 10 a.m. It was with Jamie, right?
Yes.
At 9, shout out to Jamie Cooper. At 9 or 10 a.m. is cool. It's a thing. It's normal. But then you get shamed, right, for wanting to smoke a joint. So appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Clubhouse, man, it's going crazy right now. So
I've been getting all of that. There was one point in time where I'm like, Chris does not have a job.
Yo.
Regardless of what time of night or day it is, Chris Jackson. all of them popping up. And then, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't matter what time of day. Up.
I wasn't in the ratchet room.
I'm like, that's weird.
I feel like I can attest to that. When I first linked with Chris and talked to him, he's like, yeah, man, I had a long night. What? The world isn't even open.
All Clubhouse.
And I was like, and this was before I was really familiar. I was like, oh, that's a club. And then I was like, yo, you got it.
For the record, it's usually in the cannabis-oriented rooms where it's how to enter the cannabis industry. This room had went on for like 5 days in a row, and I was on night shift when y'all saw me on there at 2 a.m.
No.
Night shift.
You didn't see me in no other room.
I know you were in stuff during the day.
Right.
You just said night shift.
Listen, when you saw me at 2 a.m., listen. It's a little addictive. If you don't have Clubhouse, it's addictive. It is. Yeah. I got over that though the first couple weeks, and now I'm much better.
Same here. Now I'm like, I have work.
Yeah.
And it was over the holidays, so I had extra time.
You know what? That's perspective.
Apology accepted from all of you. Yeah, thank you.
But no, I legitimately was like, Chris don't got no job. Okay, Tommy.
Man, she got jokes today. No, but networking has been crazy. I got 3 or 4 major deals coming down the pipeline from Clubhouse. So you use it the right way. For those of you who like Clubhouse, you use it the right way, it could be something, and you might enjoy the ratchet rooms too. I don't know, but that ain't my style. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of nurse rooms. On Clubhouse. A lot of nurses pop in. A lot of the folks that we've been following, we've had the opportunity to speak to some people on there. So it's good when you find your room.
Your tribe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people who you otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to speak to, right?
Absolutely agree.
Now, I mean, even at conferences, even if you run into some of these people, you still don't necessarily have a chance to talk to.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So this really gives you the opportunity to ask whatever questions, say whatever you want to. It's been a tool for those who know how to work it the right way. So.
Completely agree.
Do you?
I do.
All right, cool. Thank you all for joining us for another week. Appreciate the Midwest Canna Nurses for joining us. Thank you for your time and your transparency. I know it's not always the easiest thing to do, but we appreciate the role that you play as Black women and nurses and medical professionals in the field, right? So it's 100% needed, and we 1,000% need more of it, right? So thank you for being here, and per usual, thank you to everyone who decided to join us, every follower, every subscriber. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, but Our goal is to bring you valuable content as often as we can, like the Midwest Canna Nurses. And we look forward to seeing you all on the next episode. So talk to you soon. Thanks.